There are arrangements that people make with grief. Not the grief that announces itself, the loud kind, the visible kind, the kind that arrives with a clear occasion and that produces in the people who receive it the clear response of consolation. The other kind of grief, the quiet kind. The kind that arrives from the loss of something that was supposed to continue, a relationship that was supposed to be ongoing, a person who was supposed to be present, a connection that was supposed to deepen over years and that instead disappeared one Tuesday and did not return. This kind of grief did not have a clear occasion. It had accumulated occasions, a birthday card not acknowledged, a school play attended alone, a graduation where the seat next to you was empty. It had the specific, daily, here again quality of a grief that did not go away because the occasion for it kept recurring. This is a story about a man named Victor who had been in that grief for 10 years, who had raised his son Marcus alone for the first 12 years of Marcus's life, and who had been, in those 12 years, exactly the father he had always intended to be, present, organized, forward-moving. This is what the work looks like. And who had then lost Marcus at 22 to a rupture that had the specific accumulated. This was building for a long-time quality of ruptures that were not sudden, but that arrived as the final form of a thing that had been in the room for years. Marcus had left. Victor had not stopped trying to find the way back. He had not stopped. He had been trying for 10 years in the specific patient, I know the door might not open way of a man who had decided that the trying was the thing regardless of the result, and who had been trying anyway. And about what happened on a Family Feud stage on a Thursday afternoon when Steve Harvey looked at Victor at the family podium and said, "Before we play the game, I need you to turn around." And Victor turned around, and the door opened. Hit that like button and subscribe right now before we go any further, because this channel is here for exactly these stories, for the 10 years and the turning around and the door, and we come back with one every single week. Now let us talk about Victor. Victor Wallace was 58 years old, and was a retired firefighter and current fire safety instructor in Cincinnati, Ohio, who had been with the Cincinnati Fire Department for 26 years, and who had, from 26 years of that work, the specific, organized, assess the situation and respond quality of someone whose profession had required him to be the calm in rooms where everything was not calm, and who had applied this quality. Over 26 years and 2 decades of single fatherhood to everything that had required it, which had been a great deal. He had been Marcus's sole parent from the time Marcus was 7, when Marcus's mother had left, not dramatically, not with a specific crisis, but in the slow, accumulated, this is not the life I wanted way that some people left, which was its own kind of leaving and which had produced in Victor the specific, organized. The situation is what it is quality of a man who assessed the situation correctly and responded accordingly, which was to raise his son. He had raised him. He had done it for 12 years of school pickups and homework and parent-teacher conferences, and the second shift schedule at the firehouse that required coordination and planning, and the specific, daily, I have figured out how to do this quality that single parenthood required. He had been present at everything. He had been the kind of father who was not merely available but who was actually there, who listened, who showed up, who took the seat at the school play and the chair at the parent-teacher conference and the place at the table every night. Marcus had left at 22. Not physically, he had moved out at 20 when he went to college, which was not leaving, which was simply the next thing. He had left at 22 in the specific conversation that ended things way, in the form of a confrontation about something that had been building for years. The specific accumulated grievance that children of single parents sometimes built around the parent who stayed, because the parent who stayed was the available target for the grief about the parent who left, and because the grief had to go somewhere, and because the available target was the one who was there. Victor understood this in the way that people understood things that had been explained to them carefully by the therapist he had been seeing since the rupture. Understanding it did not fix it. The door was still closed. He had been trying to open it for 10 years. He had sent letters, actual letters, written on paper, twice a year every year for 10 years, 20 letters. He did not know if Marcus had read them. He did not know if Marcus had received them, though the addresses had been current at the time of each sending, and the letters had not been returned. He sent them because the sending was the available thing, and because he had decided that the available thing was what you did. His daughter Keisha, 34, was Marcus's younger sister, who had been 7 when Marcus left, and who was now an adult with her own children, and who had maintained, for 10 years, the specific, difficult, I am not in the middle of this quality of a sibling who loved both her father and her brother, and who had not chosen sides, and who had in 10 years the most comprehensive external picture of both of them available to anyone. She was here because she had submitted the application, because she had thought her father deserved an afternoon organized around who he was, because she had thought the room might do something good, and because she had, 6 weeks before the taping, received a phone call. Victor's sister, Diane, 55, was a social worker in Cincinnati with the warm, direct, "I have been in rooms like this" quality of someone whose profession had required her to be present for difficult things, and who was present now. Victor's best friend of 30 years, Charles, 60, was a retired schoolteacher with the warm, steady, 30-year-long view quality of someone who had known this man through everything, and who was here because you were there for your people and Victor was his person. And Keisha's husband, David, 36, who had married into this family 6 years ago, and who had the warm, organized, "This is my family" quality of a man who understood what he was part of, and who was here because he was part of it. 6 weeks before the taping, Keisha had received a phone call from Marcus. He had called her not in the context of Victor, not saying anything about Victor directly, but calling in the specific. Something has shifted quality of someone who was not yet ready to say the thing directly, but who was circling toward it. They had talked for an hour. At the end of the call, Marcus had said, "How is he doing?" He had said it in the quiet, "I am asking, but I am not ready for the answer to be direct voice." Keisha had said, "He is still here." She had said it simply. She had said, "He sends letters." Marcus had been quiet for a moment. He had said, "I know." Keisha had said nothing else. She had let the knowing be in the call without making it more than it was. After the call, she had called the Family Feud production company. She had told them the story. She had said, "I want my father to have the right room." The production team had reached out to Marcus. Marcus had said yes. He had said it in the quiet, "I am ready" voice of someone who had been circling toward the door for longer than the phone call and who had arrived. The opposing family was the Williams family from Louisville, warm, well-prepared, entirely decent, and going to be in a room where the game was not the most important thing, and who were going to receive that with the specific warmth and grace that entirely decent people received things when they understood what they were in the presence of. The pregame. Steve Harvey moved through both families with the customary warmth and arrived at Victor with the genuine, curious, "What is the real thing here" quality he brought to people who had something to tell him. He asked about the fire department. Victor described it with the warm, organized, "This is what the work was" quality. 26 years, the specific, daily, "This is what was required" quality of the work. Steve Harvey asked about the fire safety instruction. Victor said, "I teach people what to do when the situation is dangerous." He said, "How to stay calm and how to make the right moves." He said it in the flat, organized voice. Steve Harvey said, "That sounds like you spent 26 years learning how to stay calm in dangerous situations and now you teach it." Victor said, "Yes." He said, "It helps." He said it with the quiet, double-meaning quality of someone who had also applied the staying calm in dangerous situations practice to things that were not fires. Steve Harvey received it. He asked about Marcus. Victor said, "He is my son." He said it in the simple voice. He said, "We have not spoken in 10 years. He said it in the flat, accurate, "This is the account" voice. He said, "I have been trying to find the way back." He said, "I send letters." He said, "I do not know if he reads them." He said, "I send them because the sending is the thing I can do." He said, "The control available to me is the sending." He said, "So I send." He said it in the organized, "This is how I manage it" voice of a firefighter who had learned that in dangerous situations you did what was in your control and you did not spend energy on what was not. Steve Harvey was very still. He said, "How many letters?" Victor said, 20. He said, 2 a year for 10 years. He said, "I write them on his birthday and on the anniversary of the last time I saw him." He said, "Birthday because I want him to know I am thinking about him." He said, "Anniversary because I want him to know I have not forgotten the last time." He said it in the plain, organized, "These are the reasons" voice. Steve Harvey said nothing for a moment. He said, "Sir." He said it in the quiet voice. He said, "I am going to ask you to trust me for a moment during the game." He said, "I have something I want to do and I am going to ask you to let me do it." He said, "Will you trust me?" Victor looked at him. He said, "Yes." He said it in the simple, direct, "I have said yes to harder things" voice. The game began. The first round was played with the warm, forward-moving, "Both teams are here" quality of a competitive Family Feud round. Victor played with the organized, practical, assess and respond quality, right at the rate of someone who had been reading situations correctly for 26 years. Keisha was warm and sharp. Diane was direct and right. Charles had the 30-year-long view, warm accuracy. David was organized and present. Second round, after the second question, Steve Harvey stopped the game. He said, "Victor." He said it in the quiet, direct, "I have something to do" voice. He said, "I told you I was going to ask you to trust me." He said, "This is that moment." He said, I need you to turn around. Victor looked at him. He was in the specific. I said yes, and I am going to keep yes quality of a man who had made a commitment and who kept his commitments. He said, okay. He said it in the quiet, I am going to do this voice. He turned around. At the back of the stage, the door was open. A man was standing in it who was 32 years old and who had his father's height and his father's shoulders and the specific. Something like his father quality that children had when they had grown up with one parent and had absorbed that parent's quality into the shape of themselves. He was wearing a gray jacket. He was standing in the door with the full, present, I have driven here and I am in the door quality of someone who had made the decision and who was in the decision. Victor saw his son. He stood for a moment in the specific, full 10 years of letters, and the door is open quality of a man who had been keeping the sending going for a decade and who had not stopped, and who was now in the room where the not stopping had produced the door being open. He was very still. He was in it. He was a firefighter who had spent 26 years learning how to stay calm in dangerous situations, and he was not calm. He was entirely in it. He walked to the back of the stage. Marcus walked toward him from the door. They met in the middle. They were not in the center of the stage. They were toward the back in the specific, private. This is between us quality of a reunion that was happening in a public room, but that was not for the public room, that was for them, and the room understood this and received it in the warm, respectful, we are witnessing something that is theirs quality. They embraced. Victor held his son in the specific. This is my son, 10 years, 20 letters. I did not stop quality of a father who had spent 10 years keeping the door visible and who had his son back under his hands. Marcus held his father in the specific. I have been circling toward this quality of a son who had been circling for longer than anyone knew. The room was very still. Keisha had her hand over her mouth and her husband's arm around her, and was in the full, receiving this, my father and my brother quality of a daughter and sister in the room where both of them were. Diane had the social worker's specific. I have hoped for this quality, the quality of someone who had been in difficult family rooms professionally, and who had in those rooms developed the specific professional hope that the difficult rooms could become different rooms. Charles had the 30-year friend specific. I have been beside this man quality, the quality of someone who had been present for all 10 years of the letters, and who was present now, and who was receiving the now with everything the 10 years had built in him. Steve Harvey was at the edge of the stage. He was where he was when things were happening that belonged to the people they were happening to at the edge, holding the room, letting the center be theirs. He was in it. He was not going to be the thing that was happening. He was going to be present for the thing that was happening. This was the distinction he had learned in 30 years of being in rooms with real things and that he applied here fully. After the time that the time needed, not a performed time, the real time, the time that was the length of what needed to happen, Steve Harvey walked to the center. He said, I want to say something. He said it in the quiet, organizing. The room should have this voice. He said this man sent his son a letter on his birthday and on the anniversary of the last time they spoke, every year, for 10 years. He said it in the flat, factual voice. 20 letters, he said. He sent them because the control available to him was the sending. He said, he is a firefighter. He is a fire safety instructor. He has spent 26 years learning how to respond correctly in situations where the available actions were limited. He said, and the available action was the sending, so he sent. He said, 20 letters. He looked at Marcus. He said, I want to ask you something. He said it in the direct, I am going to ask the real question voice. Did you read them? Marcus said, yes. He said it quietly. He said it in the plain, this is the honest answer voice of someone answering honestly in a room that had received the honest answer from everyone who had been in it. He said, I read all of them. He said, I kept them. He paused. He said, I kept all 20. He said it in the quiet, this is what I want him to know voice, the specific, most important part voice. He said, I read them and I kept them and I kept thinking I was going to respond and I did not know how to respond. He said, I did not know what to say. He said, and then Keisha called and I heard something in her voice and I thought, he paused. He said, I thought, I have been waiting for the right words and the right words are not coming because the right words for this are not words. He said, the right thing for this is showing up. He said it in the specific, I have just understood this quality of someone who had arrived at a conclusion. He said, so I showed up. He said it simply, as the explanation of what he had done. Victor received this. He received the 20 letters read and kept in the specific, full. I did not stop, and the not stopping was heard quality of a man who had been keeping the sending going because it was the available thing, and who had just found out that the available thing had been received, that the door had been visible and had been seen, that the 20 letters had been read and kept and carried for 10 years by the son who had been circling toward the door for longer than anyone knew. He said, you kept them. He said it in the quiet, this is the thing voice. Marcus said, yes. Victor said, all of them. Marcus said, all of them. Victor said, I did not know. Marcus said, I know. He said, I am sorry I did not tell you sooner. He said, I am sorry I did not come sooner. He said it in the plain, honest, I am accounting for this voice. He said, I was not ready sooner. He said, I am ready now. He said it in the simple, this is where I am voice. Steve Harvey looked at both of them. He kept the letters. He said it to the room. All 20, he said, and he showed up. He said, because the right thing for this was not words. He said that. He said, the right thing for this was showing up, so he showed up. He said, I want to name what just happened clearly so the room has it. He said, a man spent 10 years sending letters. The letters were received, they were kept, they were read, they were carried. He said, and when the time was right, his son showed up. Because the time was right. He said, the time being right did not happen by accident. The time being right happened because for 10 years a man kept the door visible. He said, he sent the letters because the sending was the available thing. He said, the sending was the available thing and he did the available thing and the available thing worked. He said it in the plain, final, this is the lesson voice. The available thing worked. He said, do the available thing. He said, keep the door visible. He said, 10 years, 20 letters, the door stayed visible. He said, tonight the door opened. He said it with the warm, certain, this is simply what happened voice. The door opened. The game resumed with Marcus in a chair at the side of the stage watching, because it was his father's game and his father's afternoon, and Marcus had come to be in the room, and he was going to be in the room in the available way, which was the chair at the side. Victor played the rest of the game with the specific, released, forward-moving quality of a man who had been carrying something for 10 years and who had put it down here in this room, and whose hands were therefore free for the game. He was right at the rate of a man with free hands, which was high. Keisha played with the warm, I have my brother and my father in the same room quality. Diane was warm and steady. Charles had the specific, I have watched you send letters for 10 years and the door is open quality of a 30-year friend receiving the result of a decade of the available thing. David was organized and present. The Wallace family won the main game, fast money. Victor walked to the podium. He walked with the specific 26-year firefighter's walk. The organized, forward-facing, respond correctly walk that was simply how he walked now, after 26 years of walking that way. And that had been, for 10 years, also the walk of a man who was doing the available thing while the door was not yet open, and who was going to keep doing the available thing until the door opened, or until it didn't, and who was going to keep doing it either way. Steve Harvey looked at him from across the stage. He said, 26 years, 20 letters, the available thing. He looked at Victor. The door opened tonight. He said it in the warm, certain, this is what happened voice. Let's see what doing the available thing for 10 years looks like in 20 seconds. Victor said, start the clock. He hit the button. Victor Wallace answered 5 Family Feud survey questions in 20 seconds with the warm, organized, entirely accurate intelligence of a man who had spent 26 years in the specific, assess and respond. What does the situation require practice? And who applied this to survey questions with the same direct, nothing wasted, right the first time quality. The quality of someone whose professional and personal life had been organized around finding what was available and doing it. And who had been doing it for a long time, and who was doing it now in 20 seconds in the warm, free hands quality of a man who had put down what he had been carrying and whose attention was entirely available for the 5 questions. 4 answers were number 1. His 5th answer, delivered at 16 seconds in Victor's voice, the flat, organized, this is the answer voice, was number 1. Keisha scored 83 points in the second seat. Combined total, 268 points. $20,000. Steve Harvey brought the check. He stood in front of Victor and he held it and he said, I said, do the available thing, keep the door visible. He said, this man did the available thing for 10 years. He held the check between them. $20,000 for the available thing. He said, for 20 letters and the staying and the keeping of the door visible. He gave the check to Victor. Victor held it. He looked at it with the organized, practical, this is what the thing is for quality. He said, some of this is going to go toward the house repairs I have been putting off. He said it in the warm, entirely practical, this is what the money is for voice. He said, I was waiting to do them because, he paused. He said, I was waiting to do them with Marcus. He said it in the specific, I have just said something true voice of someone who had not fully planned to say what he said. He looked at the side of the stage where Marcus was sitting in the chair. He said, with Marcus. Marcus in the chair said, I know how to do drywall. He said it in the warm, direct, this is relevant information voice. The room produced the laugh. Victor said, I know you do, I taught you. He said it with the warm, settled, this is who we are quality. Marcus said, you did. He said, I have used it. Victor said, good. He said, that is what it was for. He said it in the flat, organized, the available thing voice. He said, "That is what everything I gave you was for." He said it in the quiet, plain, this is the account voice. "For you to use, that is what it was for." Steve Harvey received this. He was in the last 30 seconds and he was going to be in them fully. He looked at the room. He said, "That is what everything I gave you was for you to use." He said it to the room. He said, 10 years of letters. 26 years of the fire department, 12 years of single fatherhood. He said, "For you to use." He said, "That is what available things were for." He looked at Victor. He said, "You did it right." He said it simply as the accurate assessment. He said, "You did the available thing and you kept the door visible and you waited and the time became right and the door opened." He said, "And your son showed up because you kept the door visible." He said, "And he knew how to do drywall because you taught him." He said, "And everything you gave him was for him to use." He said, "You did it right." He said it one more time. "You did it right." The episode aired 7 weeks later. The clip spread in the immediate, personal, multiple direction way of things that named more than one true thing. The first was the letters, the specific 20 letters kept in read quality which spread among people who had been sending the available thing without knowing if it was being received, who had been doing the available thing in the dark. One wrote, "I have been sending emails that are not answered for 3 years. I do not know if they are read. I have been thinking about stopping. I am not going to stop. The available thing is sending. The available thing is keeping the door visible. I will do the available thing." The second was Marcus's explanation of why he came. "The right thing for this is not words. The right thing is showing up." Several people said, "I have been waiting for the right words and the right words have not come. I needed someone to name the alternative. The alternative is showing up." Several said they had shown up to something after watching the clip. Several said it had gone the way it needed to go. The third was Victor's line about the house repairs. The practical, organized, I was waiting to do them with Marcus quality, which traveled in the specific, private, small, true detail way of things that were most true when they were most specific. One wrote, he was saving the drywall for his son. He was keeping the door visible in ways he might not have named as keeping the door visible. The house repairs were also letters. They were also the available thing. Several said they had small, specific, I was saving this for you things in their own lives and that Victor had helped them see what those things were. Marcus called Victor the following Sunday. It was the first call in 10 years. Victor answered on the first ring. They talked for 2 hours. Not about the years were real and were going to require a long time and multiple conversations and patience, and the specific, organized, assess and respond quality that Victor had been building for 26 years. They talked about the house. They talked about the drywall. They talked about what needed to be done and who would do what and when. It was practical. It was exactly the right thing to be. The practical was the available thing and they were doing the available thing together and the available thing was working. They did the drywall 3 weeks later. It took a weekend. Victor made food. Marcus brought tools. They worked. Keisha came the second day and brought the grandchildren. The house was louder than it had been in a long time. In the evening, when the work was done and they were sitting in the repaired room, Victor said, I did not stop. He said it in the quiet, this is the thing I want you to know voice. Marcus said, I know. He said it in the plain, I know and I am glad voice. He said the letters. Victor said all 20. Marcus said all 20. He said, I read them on his birthday. He said it in the quiet, this is how I read them voice. He said, my birthday. Victor said, why your birthday? Marcus said, because you sent them on mine. He said, I wanted to read them on a day when you were thinking about me. He said, it seemed like the right time to hear from you. Victor received this. He was quiet for a moment. He said, that is a good reason. He said it in the warm, plain, I received this voice. Marcus said, I thought so. He said, I have 20 birthdays of your letters stored in a box. He said, I look at the box sometimes. Victor said, you could have just told me that sooner. He said it in the warm, dry, I am going to name the obvious voice. Marcus said, I know. He said, I know that now. Victor said, now is fine. He said it in the plain, the available time is the available time voice. He said, now is when we are. He said, we are here now. Marcus said, yes. He said, we are here now. He said it in the same voice, the same register. The organized, practical, forward-moving voice that Marcus had from his father, who had given him the available things, which had been for Marcus to use, which he had used, which had produced a man who had driven to a Family Feud studio and stood in the door in a gray jacket, and had shown up because the time was right and the right thing was not words. There are arrangements that people make with grief. Victor made the arrangement that the letters were the available thing, and that the available thing was the thing to do. He did the available thing for 10 years. The door opened. He did it right. The room knows it. The letters are in a box. They are read on a birthday. Marcus looks at the box sometimes. The house has new drywall. The available thing worked. If this story reached you, if you have been doing the available thing without knowing if it is being received, or if you have been keeping someone's letters in a box and have not told them, share this today. Leave a comment below and tell us what you're carrying from this story, because this community carries things together and your voice here matters. And subscribe right now if you are not already with us, because every single week we come back with stories exactly like this one. Stories about the 20 letters, stories about the available thing, and stories about the son who kept all 20 and read them on his birthday and who showed up because the right thing was not words. We will see you in the next one.